Can you remember the last time you saw New York Jets fans this angry over winning a football game? I sure can't. I'm Glenn Norton with JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So I did a quick interactive thing last night after the game because I was pumped. I was excited. Big win, and by big win I mean, as I mentioned on the show, how many times as Jets fans have we had to sit there and watch teams play atrocious football and still find a way to win. Like they make a couple of plays with a couple of minutes left and they win the game and you think, "Damn it. How did they pull that one out? How did they look so bad for 55, 56, 57, 58 minutes?" And then within the last minute and a half, boom, turn it on and win the game. And you think, I wish the Jets could do that. And the Jets do it, and everybody's mad because it was ugly. And it was ugly. There's no getting around it. There is no getting around how ugly that football game was. However, a couple of things I've talked about on this show before. Reasons versus excuses and the fault and the next man up mentality. With the injuries the Jets had last night, and I get the Giants had injuries too, but this isn't a Giants show, so who cares? Um, with the injuries the Jets had last night, losing your starting center while the guy you have as your backup center is already out. So you plug in your third center and you move him over from where he's playing guard and you bring in your fourth, fifth tackle to play guard while your third center is at center for a few snaps. Then he goes down and you go to your fourth center who has never played center. And you got Max Mitchell at right tackle who's, solid enough player, but he's no great shakes, right? And the next man up mentality, which I've discussed in the past, it is vital to have that mentality in the huddle, in the locker room, in the building, even team employee. If you're in the coaches, not just the players, got to have that mentality. Why? As everyone, as every NFL coach will tell you, we hear it from Robert Saleh, but you hear it from every coach when you ask about injuries. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you. Nobody's going to take it easy on you. No one's gonna sit back and take into consideration the fact that you're hurting and maybe let's not exploit that. That wouldn't be very nice. That doesn't happen. So when you're in that huddle and you're in that locker room, you have to grab that dude and say, "Hey, you're the next man up. So and so is out. He's down. You're the guy that's got to fill in. Didn't practice there this week? Too bad. Never played there before? Too bad. You are today. You are now. So you're the next guy up. And you got to do your job. Let's go." That makes sense. That's as far as the next man up mentality should go. But for fans and observers and pundits and analysts and broadcasters to pretend that a drop off in talent doesn't matter or shouldn't have an impact, it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. Next man up. Yeah, I got it. But the example I've used in the past is if you see a line on a game that you love and you think, "I'm going to bet that game." I love that team too. Oh, 2-point favorite. I think they're going to win by 15, 20 points. And then let's say you walk over to the casino or you log on to your whatever gambling account to place your bet. I'm gonna put $1,000 on this one. This is gonna be a big win. And then on your way to make the bet, you see a headline or somebody tells you, or an alert on your phone. The team you like that you were gonna put that money on, oh, they've just announced that the quarterback and the number one receiver and the starting center are out tonight. And they're not going to be playing. And be honest with yourself here. Are you going to say, "You know what? Put that money back in my pocket and save that for another day"? Or are you going to go, "Nah, man, next man up. This doesn't change. This changes nothing. Next man up, I'm making that bet. I thought they were going to win before. Doesn't matter." If that was the case, why would you pay attention to an offseason? Who cares who you sign? Who cares who you draft? Next man up. Talent doesn't matter. It's just next man up. It's like this dumb saying that people just regurgitate because former players say it, and they say it because they're former players and they're having that player mentality of that in the building mentality, which makes sense. But as an observer who's looking at things realistically, who doesn't have to be in the huddle and having that mentality, it's beyond dumb to pretend that talent drop off doesn't matter if you just say next man up. It doesn't work that way in reality. Look what I remember when the Colts got Andrew Luck and they only got him because Peyton Manning got hurt and who was it, Jim Sorgi, whoever it was, became the quarterback, and they went 1-15 or whatever it was. Why not next man up? Maybe it matters that Peyton Manning is a billion times better than Sorgi or whoever the backup was. So I don't get, like I said, players, huddle, locker room, building, get it. Next man up makes sense. Fans watching a game, pretending it shouldn't matter, that you've got your fourth center who's never played a game there in his life. He's only played 16 career snaps, I believe is what they said on the broadcast. And now he's your number one center because the other three guys are down. Your tackle, or your fourth, fifth tackle, who is not a very good tackle, is now playing out of position at guard. Like, these things aren't going to matter. And I see people today, why couldn't the Jets run the ball? Didn't they next man up? Why didn't they just next man up? It doesn't work that way. Talent matters. Players matter. Being good matters. If the next guy behind you isn't good, that's important. And that's why you would change a game plan or not place a bet if you find out guys are hurt who you were expecting to play. So for people say, oh, it's an excuse. No. Again, that's the other thing I've talked about on this show. Excuse versus reason. A reason is a logical explanation that helps understand why something happened. Why couldn't the Jets run the ball? Because they had a center who's never played at center before. And they had a guard who's not very good. And they have a right tackle who's playing there because AVT's out, and he's a significant downgrade. Huge downgrades in 3 out of 5 spots. And people are perplexed. Why didn't they run the ball well? Folks, this talent matters. Better players versus worse players matters. These things are important. Anyway, enough on that. Zach Wilson. So fans want to see him benched. Some fans want to see him benched. He was terrible last night. And listen, he made mistakes. Took the sacks. Had some ugly throws. But again, I was surprised we didn't see more ugly throws from Zach Wilson because in those conditions, throwing a wet football isn't the same as throwing a dry football. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to throw a football. He drilled those 2 throws with under 30 seconds to go. Those are beautiful. But every now and then, the ball's going to pop out of your hand when it's soaking wet like that in a driving rain. Zach Wilson last season, this is the last time I can remember him playing in conditions this poor. That famous New England game, right? That was an excuse. That wasn't a reason, Zach Wilson. Because is the water, the rain going to affect the ball? Of course. Does that mean you should be completely incapable of completing passes? No. And last year, Zach Wilson, in a driving rain, completed 9 of 22 for 77 yards. And then he came out after the game, he's like, oh yeah, the conditions. Mac Jones didn't have that problem. He completed like 60, 65%, whatever it was. You completed 9 out of 22. So that was an excuse. You want to say it's a reason why 1 or 2 balls went errant? Fine. Ball popped out of my hand, okay. But all day, couldn't throw any footballs accurately with the rain while the other guy was? That's an excuse. That's not a reason. Yesterday, in a driving rain against a good defense, not 9 out of 22, but 17 out of 36. I counted 5 drops. I'm going to watch normally I will have watched the game a second time by now, but I haven't this morning. Going to do it in a little while. I'm going to count the drops. 240 yards and a touchdown. Yes, Brees Hall did most of the work on the touchdown. I get it. But you get a guy who the last time he played in these conditions goes 9 of 22 for 77, and then yesterday in similar conditions goes 17 out of 36 for 240 and a touchdown. But I see people that just want to but he took those sacks. He did. Listen, nobody is saying Zach Wilson played a perfect game. Nobody is saying Zach Wilson is, now the unquestioned long-term starter of this team. Or, he's the guy once Aaron Rodgers goes. No, all anybody's saying about Zach Wilson, and again, we saw it yesterday, compare his last game in these conditions to yesterday's game in these conditions, and he has gotten better. Is he great? No. Was he perfect? No. He was damn good when he needed it most, wasn't he? Did you happen to catch those two throws he made with under 30 seconds remaining? And the nice rollout and hit Lazard on rolling out to his right in overtime? The kid did some good things. He did some frustrating things. Think back to last year, there were no good things. It was a mess. It was a shambles. Everything was bad. Now he's some good, some bad. And I would even argue yesterday was mostly good, given the conditions, given the pressures. I see people say he was bailing on clean pockets again. Again, I got to go back and watch. He was probably a little more skittish yesterday with the offensive line situation being what it was. And even Mekhi Becton, and Becton said it as much after the game. You got to appreciate he owned it. Mekhi Becton said, I was bad today. Got to be better. Kayvon Thibodeau was eating his lunch. Thibodeau had a monster game. Max Mitchell wasn't much better on the other side. So, yeah, these things are going to play into a quarterback's head. And I'm sure there were plays where, so from the quarterback's perspective, you're going to have plays where he sees the rush and he can anticipate, he can see a guy about to get beat. Oh, that guy's coming through the A gap. I better get out of here. He's going to be here in a second. And it looks, if you just look at it and look when he starts to run and where the pressure is, well, there's no pressure. Yeah, but then less than a second behind, here comes the pressure. So he read and anticipated and bailed. So I think there was some of that yesterday where people were saying, look, he's bailing on clean pockets. No, he's bailing on what he sees. He can see the pressure's about to come. He's getting out of there to put himself in position to make a throw. So the drops, Alan Lazard, I don't know what the hell you're going to do. What you have one wide receiver on this team. You have one wide receiver you can count on, Garrett Wilson. That's it. Xavier Gibson, not sure he played more than a handful of snaps. Maybe I think he was dinged up. I don't know how much that played into it. Jason Brownlee was active. I don't recall seeing him on the field. Not a great job there, or not of getting guys into games, into the game. You want to see, like, let's involve some more targets. You shouldn't come out of a game and I think like 4 guys caught passes yesterday. That's not good enough. Garrett Wilson's great, love him, but you can't have him being the only guy you're targeting. And again, the Alan Lazard drops are concerning at this point. I don't know. Listen, I'm watching, and I posted this on JetNation.com. I'm watching Jackson Smith and Jigba score the game-winning touchdown for Seattle after scoring a big touchdown last week. Looks like he's finally getting involved in that offense. I'm watching DeAndre Hopkins catch 4 balls for 128 and 3 touchdowns. Both guys the Jets could have had. Both, and I was on it at the time. I said JSN should have been the pick at 11. I said DeAndre Hopkins as a free agent was a no-brainer. And don't talk to me. DeAndre Hopkins said he didn't want to play for the Jets. No, he didn't. He was doing a silly interview where some guy was throwing out team names, and DeAndre Hopkins was making silly faces to indicate whether or not he wanted to go there. And yes, he did make like a kind of face with the Jets. But he also reportedly named the list of teams he wanted to play for, and the Titans weren't on that list. But they made the best offer, so that's where he landed. If the Jets would have made the best offer, that's where he would have landed. But Glenn, they had Corey Davis. Yeah. And you could have cut or traded Corey Davis before knowing he was planning on retiring anyway, or stepping away. And that would have almost made DeAndre Hopkins free, with the Davis money. I think your cap would have gone up by 2. I think Hopkins got $13 million, if I'm not mistaken, and Corey Davis was due 10. So if you would have signed Hopkins, let go of Davis, you're getting a guy, and I said this at the time, I tweeted out, DeAndre Hopkins, you would have to add up his drops over a 3 or 4 year span to get a 1-year total that you see out of Corey Davis or Alan Lazard. They both drop a lot of footballs. Alan Lazard is on pace for double-digit drops this year. DeAndre Hopkins has had stretches of years where he doesn't have 10 drops combined. And I think he's got 2 this year, which is a lot for him. I think his ceiling, I think the most you see out of him in a year is 2 or 3. And I think he has 2 this year. Alan Lazard had 2 or 3 yesterday. He had 2 the week before. Lazard drops a lot of footballs. So the Jets legitimately have one receiver they can count on. Maybe you get Gibson involved and maybe he gets the job done, but that's not happening right now. And that's where we look at Joe Douglas. Joe D may have been planning on standing pat over the next 48 hours or whatever till the trade deadline, 30, 24, 48 hours, like Tuesday, whenever it is. Um, you got to import some bodies, Joe. You're a Super Bowl contender. Or you Super Bowl defense. You need another guy who can get open. And the name we've heard it from Scott Mason, play like a Jet. We've heard it on, or you've seen it on Twitter from a lot of, the prognosticators. Hunter Renfrow. I don't know why the Raiders don't like the guy, but all he did when he had a chance in Oakland and Vegas and wherever, get open and catch footballs in the slot. Jets don't have that right now. They have Randall Cobb. And again, Gibson, who they didn't feature. Renfro's out there. Proven, reliable vet. Great hands, productive guy. You add him, maybe you get him for a day. I mean, listen, I don't know how much Oakland can hope to get for him. They won't play him. Would they take Carl Lawson in a deal? Give it a shot. Would it take Carl Lawson in a day 3 pick? Give it a shot. Offensive line, I talked about this yesterday. Tweeted this out. Tweeted this out after the game. Went and took a look at a few key free agents and guys who are currently residing on NFL practice squads because we don't know the full extent of McGovern's injury. He apparently left the game in a cast. Schweitzer left the game on crutches. So who knows how long these guys are going to be out. But right now, I'm trying to find it was a short list, not not a ton of guys available, which as you would expect at this point. It's not as if you're gonna find high level starting players available sitting on teams' practice squads. However, there are some starters, or I should say, there are some players with starting experience and a D line too. You got to look at the defensive line, right? We've got Mike Pennell because Al Wood's out for the year, as we've discussed. Mike Pennell, former Jets defensive tackle, you remember him from a few years ago, is on the practice squad for the Kansas City Chiefs. He could be a guy who fills in there because, again, I know people have said, Tanzel Smart's a guy, expect them to bring him up, which would make sense. Tanzel Smart, proven veteran guy. Well, I shouldn't say proven veteran guy. A guy who's been around for a while for the Jets, whether, he's spent a few years on their practice squad. He has had some active games, some games on the active roster. Sorry, I was pulling up this list now. But Mike Pennell is a guy who you can maybe go after. As far as free agents, well, let's do the practice squad guys first. Again, short list, not many names on here. But you've got Austin Reiter, Kansas City Chiefs. He's played in 65 career games with 38 starts. I think he's the no-brainer. I think you go get him yesterday. Not claim him, but just poach him from the practice squad. I don't know if that'll happen. You've got James Ferentz, New England Patriots, former starter for the Patriots. Well, 9 starts, but 60 games. He's appeared in 60 games. He's got 9 starts. And people are saying to me, oh, these guys are terrible. Yeah, but if you're going to be without your top 3 centers, they're going to be better than anything you've got. Like sometimes an acquisition is just about upgrading. Not everyone's going to be a superstar. But if you can get better, get better. And that's what Reeder, Ferentz, that's what they would bring. Jack Anderson, guard, played for the Bills. I don't know he's been that good as a pro, but if I recall correctly, Texas Tech guy who I liked as a late round player. I believe he's played both guard spots. He moves fairly well for an interior guy. Not a superstar, but again, if you're looking for depth, he couldn't, you could do worse than that. Call Ben Jones. This is a former Pro Bowler who, yeah, he's battled a ton of injuries, but did an interview earlier in the year where he said he was rehabbing and he didn't rule out the possibility of returning to the NFL. So call Ben Jones and see, hey, are you healthy? Are you looking to onto a roster somewhere? Couple guys that jumped out at me at wide receiver. Cole Beasley, not the player he once was, but again, we're talking about upgrades. And right now, And maybe Xavier Gibson is the better option, and the Jets just aren't using him. Um, I mean, we know they're not using him. Look at his snap counts from week one all the way up till now. He's got a lot of games where only he plays a couple snaps. Cole Beasley, on the other hand, older guy, yeah, but a proven vet who's reliable hands, has been a solid player. Marquez Callaway, he's an interesting guy, wide receiver. Just a couple years ago, he had a 500 or 600 yard season, and looked like he was going to be a guy on the up and on the an up and coming guy, who ended up getting let go and not picked up again. Which those guys, I say this all the time. Any player, any guy who, especially a younger guy who's talented and proven they can play, when those guys get cut loose, I do look at it and go, "What the hell's going on here? Like, why is a player who's ascending and young not on a roster somewhere?" I don't know if there's character. I don't know if there's injury. I don't know if there's something that we don't know as fans that teams do know. But I find it weird that he's not on a roster. And the Jets, again, they need receivers. That's all it comes down to. They don't have receivers right now. I would love to see them start throwing the ball. I mean, Xavier Gibson, you look at him and he looks like a guy. His traits, you're like, oh, this guy can probably get open and make plays. But that's just not. He's not being given the opportunity to. So either he can't, or the Jets don't think he can. Either way, he's not producing anything, and the Jets need someone who can produce. So Joe Douglas, he's got to get on those phones, get working them, get a receiver, get a lineman. Um, you don't have a ton of assets to trade. You can maybe part with a day 3 pick or two because, as I'm sure you know, this team is they're expecting some. I think 3 comp picks is the expectation for the Jets. So these any 6s or 7s they have right now, um, it's not as if those are the only late day 3 picks they have. We'll see what they do. I know seems people are saying, Joe he's going to be inactive. He's not going to do anything. I'm not so sure about that. I think he's got to do something. And I'm not saying go get a superstar player. Those guys are hard to get. Teams don't like giving them up. I mean, Jesus, if you can get one, get one. I just don't see it. I don't see the Jets being able to go out and get a big fish on short notice. But if you can get a guy who has started some games and played at a solid level, that's what you're after right now. You need this roster isn't far away. The quarterback has to be better, yes. Um, there's a guy, Trevor Simeon's on the practice squad who's statistically better quarterback than Zach Wilson. But as long as this team is winning, Zach Wilson's not going anywhere, whether you like him or not. And if he's, for him to go anywhere, it's going to have to be him playing terrible and the team losing because of it. As long as he's playing at a level that they can justify he's not the problem, then he's not going anywhere. Zach's the guy. Check us out Wednesday night, 6:30. Myself and Chris Schubert. We will cover a lot of this stuff and more. Preview the Chargers, cover Jets Giants, talk about what went right, what went wrong, because there was a lot of wrong. There's no denying it. But that'll do it for this one, Jets fans. Have a good one.